Welcome everyone to Uplifting Humans, where we honor, empower, educate, and inspire the listener. I'm your host, Cylindrin Buller. Joining me today is a returning guest, Dharm Kaur Khalsa, a spiritual coach, speaker, and co-founder of Yoga West in Vancouver, a leading Kundalini yoga teacher, trainer, and a teacher of prenatal yoga, among many other things. And dear friend and incredibly knowledgeable individual. Welcome, Dharmkaur. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm so excited about what we're going to share with our listeners today. I know that you and I, in our one of our recent conversations, we were speaking of and realized that there's so much stuff out there that looks like it's a spiritual path, but actually it's disguised as one. And of course, on that note, we decided that maybe we should have a conversation around spirituality and, having it so that you are aware of what you're stepping into. And, as you know, many of the listeners are aware that the planet is being raised vibrationally. And of course, it gets really tricky to know what is being presented and what appears in front of us. And so this is our conversation today. And before we get started, I want to take this opportunity to explain to the listeners what is a template to start with, because a lot of people might be thinking, well, what the heck is that? Much like a blueprint of a vehicle, a car being designed, what they're doing is they're designing as to how it will look once it's complete. So we, as human beings, we have, we also have a blueprint, and it's also known as a template, a spirit blueprint, on which our form is constructed, and that there are many templates and geometries of source or of God that are around and in our energetic field, which has information that's coded into those fields, and they're codified just like a computer system. As we activate those templates to be present and active in our field, this in turn activates many different things in our physical body, some of which are we have a stream of certain thoughts, or we take action and we decide what we really want to bring into our lives. There's two types of templates, and this is what we are really focusing in on today. So the original blueprint that you're born with is the godlike, high frequency, high vibration, where you understand who you are beyond anything that you have ever imagined. And then the other, which is considered a false light template. And these false light templates are what we're going to discuss. There are slightly distorted information bits, not of God and not of the highest vibration or frequency, and they're dressed up to look like light. They are self-serving, low vibrational, and block our energetic fields. In what happens is that we're acting a little out of our normal programmed high frequency that we were born with. And they can be implanted or they can be gathered on our energetic field, consciously or unconsciously. And so I'm going to give you an example, and then we're going to jump into this conversation, trying to use something from the outside world to fix what's actually happening on the inside of us. So an example of that would be pain and suffering, a pattern that you're, always going to, for instance, reaching for the glass of wine, maybe numbing yourself out, maybe watching a TV program or watching a soap opera, or, you have some addictive patterns, and what are they? And that is kind of like a false template, and it's being triggered because these energetics are around your body, around your field. It's much like a virus in your system. The biggest one on the planet right now, my religion is better than yours. So on that note, Dharmkaurji, how do you feel about this, and what can someone do, and maybe share some other examples?
Right. Well, this ties into many of the underlying teachings of the religions, and there's various names are given for all of this, including the devil, you know, and the wrong, and in the early Gnostic teachings, it would be the what was that? The name of that? It's an entity that creates the world. That is not God. So anything that's separate from God is either bad or doing its own thing or crazy with power. And in the Eastern, or I should say Vedic-based spiritualities and dharmas that we call religions, there's a concept of Maya. Yes. And Maya is pretty much the same thing. There's a few little details that are different, but mostly it's the same concept, that there's this other program, there's this other being, entity, field that corrupts the original God source of creation. And it's the way that our minds, which are dualistic, because we live in a universe where we need another dimension to exist. And we actually have 3 dimensions in the physical realm, as we know, and just to be able to navigate, to have a body, to eat food, to have conversations in families, and live a life.
Yes.
And to understand that, we have to have what's called a dualistic. Dualistic means there's another.
Yeah.
And so the minute that you leave the unity field or the oneness field, which is our original separation from the one, then you're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 or more, and we call them any dimensions, and there's many New Age terms or physics terms for that. So we use our minds to describe something that's really indescribable, because as humans, we're all having the same experience. We wake up in the morning and then we have to start making decisions. We call that free will, or whatever term you want to use for it. So there's something that's happening that we're experiencing. And throughout the millennia or millions of years, human beings have described it in different ways and either given it very mythological origins, such as all of the creation stories, that every tribe, every group of humans has its own creation myths. And then it would all come down to some patriarch or some wise person in the tribe itself, right? Because it all originates from some God stream. Mm-hmm. And in the modern world, or in our modern meaning our current world,
yes,
where there's a lot of the traditional religions are disintegrating.
Yes,
especially in the West, right? In the East, a lot of the traditional ones are still going very strong, and yet being impacted tremendously by the internet and modern thinking. Mm-hmm. So the traditional ways are disintegrating, and yet we still have the same minds. We have the same bodies, and we have to navigate this world in some kind of way, because the mind needs a story. It needs a structure to operate. It has to have a meaning, or else we just go crazy. So the meanings we give are very almost arbitrary meaning we make it up. We just make up stuff. We make up stories to suit the vibration, the consciousness of the moment, to be able to just function and be with each other and have some kind of sanity as we coexist together on the planet. Mm-hmm. We tend to take the word God out because it's been associated with the old ways. And if we take God out, then we're going to also take like the devil out, or Satan out, or evil out, because that's part of like an old way, because God and good and evil and Satan and God kind of go together. So if you're not going to have God, then are you going to have evil? Are you going to have the devil? Are you going to have Maya? And we're in the middle of reformulating it all. Right. And we have to figure out what it means. And there's like some current theories that are kind of heating up right now, getting popular. And one of them is the Wetiko concept, which is very much in line with what you were describing. It's just like the template for the other, for what is not pure and crystalline and godlike. What is the one taking us away or preventing us from seeing the best, our true selves?
Right. The fullness of life here on Earth is definitely beyond, the higher frequencies or realms or fields that exist. Just for the listeners, I just want to bring your attention back to the fact that you are feeling certain things come up within your body, your physical body, but outside of your body, you actually have layers and layers of light. And those layers and layers of light are referred to many different bodies of who you are. So there's a physical me, cylindrin. Then of course there's a mental me, which is connected to the mental body, which is also a vibration or a frequency which is around me. Then there's emotional, there's astral, it goes on and on. Now, I think for the listeners to understand, before these particular symptoms or these actions are taken at the physical realm, something is happening outside of your energetic field, much like a radio wave. You know, when you're tuning your radio and all of a sudden now you can go ahead and pick a different radio station. Well, you are the radio station and you are picking up much of what is out there. And so what we're speaking of and conversing about is some of the things that are in our energetic field, which are distorted and disrupting our actions and our mental patterns, and sometimes become huge emotional eruptions. And you can't understand. I've gone to therapy. I've seen a counselor for the last 25 years. How come I'm still stuck here?
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so, a lot of teachers and preachers are not even aware. So the therapist you may be going to may have something stuck in their field, which is distorted, which is not the godlike frequency, which is, we call that, the distorted healer, template, the distorted healer false light template. And what is that? It's actually someone who's got their heart set on helping you. They really do feel like they are helping you. And they're really trying to get you to a certain place within your body, but they're not trying to get you to the place.
Or
so
they don't know how to do that. They don't
and they're running a pattern
yeah.
because of this extra distorted energetic frequency, which is penetrating. So,
right.
It's the same thing. Like, how could someone who is so on the path as a religious leader preach to somebody, my religion is much better than yours because of this.
Right.
Their heart's in the right place. They think they're delivering something which is going to uplift humanity, but it won't be uplifted to the level it should be. So it gets capped out. And so another one I know from a lot of the old methodologies, that we use, Dharmkaur, some people are still trying to teach and inspire people and to put them on the path with fear tactics. It's kind of like disempowering. I know for me as a Kundalini yoga teacher, when I came to train with you, the idea was to give me my power back and set me free.
Yeah.
Right? How many people out there are going to some guru and worshiping them? Because again, this is not this is not the way life was supposed to be. You have within you the capabilities of knowing everything that existed. And I'd love for you to touch on that, because it goes back to a lot of the teachings from 10+ years when I took Kundalini yoga teaching, with you explaining some of that, because you are not my guru, you are not the one that has all the answers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so what you've just outlined there is the struggle of the millennium. It's the actual change of the ages from the Dark Age to the Aquarian Age, or the Piscean Age to the Aquarian Age. There's, again, many ways to describe what we're going through, this opening, this awakening, this enlightenment that humanity is experiencing right now. And it's coming from thousands of years of darkness. And there's many dialogues, discussions, arguments about how many thousands of years. But that's beside the point. The point is that we've been programmed through many, many generations to give our power away to the other. And again, many reasons for it, many stories about why that is. And in the yogic world, it has to do with the shutdown of the sensory self, so that we're only operating from 5 gross senses, and the subtle senses did not operate or were not available to most people. Let's just say they weren't available. And again, many systems have many different ways of describing this, including we were at a different point in the galaxy, and when we reach this other point, then some stars start to feed us, or some portals start opening, and then our sensory self starts awakening. And again, many stories to describe why it's happening, but fundamentally our sensory self is awakening again. We're starting to perceive things at a much more subtle level, so that all of those subtle bodies that you describe, we're starting to be able to feel them and feel what it feels like to know something without touching it, seeing it, tasting it, feeling it. We just know it, but we know it from the subtle field. We have like knowingness, we have subtle feelings in the body, energies in the body. We decode through a person's energy field what we know about them or what they're communicating to us. But this is all done through the sensing realm, so that there is something we're experiencing, and according to which mother we're born to on the planet, she will tell us what that thing is. She'll say, that's a tree, that's a dog, that's your father, that's a banana. She will tell you what the thing is that you're sensing, because as a baby, when we're born, we just see energy fields. We don't have any, it's all joined up. We don't have names to separate things.
Right.
And each tribe, each culture needs a language for separating what we're going to call what.
Yes.
And if your tribe is very small and very not connected to the modern society, which very few are anymore, when you see your tribe member, they actually have an energetic structure that looks like all of your other tribe members. They don't look like another person. They have there's a particular auric field that identifies them as belonging to you, and you physically feel part of them.
Right.
And then you could call out in extended families, one would have the same kind of feeling. There's an extra feeling you have when you see a relation. Right. So the capacity to feel these feelings, including in the modern world, emotions, sensations, subtle experiences, this is awakening at a very, very rapid rate right now. And our traditional religions or spiritual teachings are not keeping up with the awakening of the human sensory self. Our physicality is changing. And the whole point of religions and spiritual dogmas is to keep things the same, so that we have a container and we have a meaning and we have a way of describing ourselves, so we feel safe and we feel connected. The whole root chakra, which is your stability and your safety net. And when the physicality of the human itself is massively changing,
yes,
and our traditional beliefs and stories are not keeping up, then there's a gap. Right. And then all the young people now are perceiving that the elders and the patriarchs are being hypocritical,
Mm-hmm.
because they're telling you to behave in one way, and yet that's not reality based for what they're experiencing. So that is perceived as hypocrisy. And so the tendency would be to try and shut it down. And whenever we perceive a threat, like the parents or the patriarchs or the elders would perceive that the young people are not keeping to the code of the tribe, then whenever there's a fear, whenever there's a safety issue that the tribe is scattering, then the tendency is to shut it down, to try and dominate it, to try and bring in fear or control techniques, which are very well honed for the years. And so the young people would experience that kind of relationship with the next generation. And it's very, traditionally young people always have to break the codes and create new ones. But now it's happening to such a at such a rapid rate that the generational split is becoming like a huge cavern and a chasm that we can't cross. And there's a lot of pain in between generations that don't understand each other. And young people tend to be impatient and not willing to give understanding, because you have to train the mind to do that. And the older people would feel rejected and not understood, and the pain in their heart of not being able to transmit their teachings, and the group think, that we are one and we are here for each other. And the young people are just rejecting that. And we see that in the streets with the government and any current laws happening. So it's just ramping up, because the physicality of the human is not the same as it used to be. And yet the young people are not God. They're not the pure truth. They're not all knowing. They're just having a new experience, but they themselves don't have words for it and stories for it. So there's a lot of frustration on their part, and those are the ones you tend to see creating the agitation, the most agitation, is because they're frustrated with it. And in the yogic world, traditionally, yoga including any technology to deal with mind, emotions, behavior, there's an opportunity now to increase this practice. And so we see a lot more meditation, mindfulness, emotional work, we call therapeutic trauma work, to uncover these patterns and get more stable to even see what's happening. Even if we don't know what to do next, just become more receptive to be able to interact with the other and create a new story.
And I think a part of what you've touched on is that the young ones that have basically decided, I don't understand any of whatever, like have been told is true or false, because they're basing everything on what they've been taught. Just like us, we have been programmed to a certain degree, and then
everybody is. Yeah, it's called conditioning, right?
Right. Yeah. And so what happens is that, and just to give you an example, one of the, the false light templates is the young ones are lost in technology. They're relying on well, let me see what Siri or Google say, rather than let me feel and sense what is actually a possibility. And so the more that they're relying on technology, which is something outside of themselves, what is happening is it is creating that separation. So anything that is creating that separation rather than bringing everyone back into oneness, into unity, is what we can say is not our true essence. It is not our highest vibration. It is not something that we were actually programmed for, because we are all bits and pieces. And the beauty of this, I think, Dharmkaur, is that, for instance, I will know in my understanding, knowledge, and experience to a certain degree. Beyond that, I have to rely on someone else. And
right, that's a key point. Yeah.
And that is the beautiful thing, that the elders that you refer to were able to go ahead and bring together, because when you look at a tribe, they in order to survive, they had to rely on each other, because the hunters were hunting, the cleaners were cleaning, the children were were being looked
They were
after.
they were the source of wisdom.
And so when we look at that setup, it's a beautiful orchestration of what was programmed and thought out, was how we have to rely on one another. But realistically, you do have to go back into that other sensing, the one that you were referring to, where it's not about your five senses. It's not about what you see and what you smell, taste, and hear. It's something beyond that. It's beyond that, because I mean, the biggest pain I think right now is there's this huge gap which is created, where the elders are sitting here, and the modalities of the elders having this separation from the new young ones and their programs and their conditioning is completely offline. And so now the gap is trying to kind of create this equilibrium, and yoga is a great way to open up those channels to do that.
Well, yoga, the actual word yoga means to unite, to join. And there's many, many technologies of yoga, but fundamentally, I mean, if you want to get to the root of it all, the fundamental nature of the traditional yoga is to connect, to link up the infinite part of ourselves, the God part of ourselves, to the finite, the limited part of ourselves, because we have two different selves.
Right.
You can describe many different ways, but fundamentally there's two. There's the infinite, unbounded, perfect self, where all love and justice and harmony, all of those ideals that we seek, they already exist within us.
Right.
And then there's the experience of being human, which is limited. And limited, it doesn't mean limited can be interpreted as you don't have access to those beautiful realms, or it could just mean it's a specialized and very concentrated experience of the infinite realm. So as a human, we're just an expression of God. We're an expression of infinity, a very unique, personalized expression of infinity. And that was, to me, that's the idea. The idea of being human is to get it's kind of like those perfume makers or elixir makers, where they create a particular fragrance or a particular healing formula that is just perfectly matched to whatever healing you need or whatever experience you need. But it has to be very concentrated and very focused and very specialized, so that we get exactly that experience. It's like the difference between like virtues, for example, determination and receptivity, or let's see, I'm thinking of things that are really different, like courage and kindness. These are all virtues. These are all experiences of human that have no opposite. They're just a very high frequency state of being. And once you're in that state of being, the frequency is exactly the same. In a Sikh path, we call it the Shabad, which is the highest codes of God, right? It's the highest frequency, but it's all the same. Once you're vibrating up there, there is no, when you have love and you have giving, there's no opposite to it. So, and yet there's a difference between experiencing courage and experiencing kindness. They're completely different experiences, and they're both fantastic. They're all, we make movies about them. We have legends and epic poems about them, and we love having these experiences. So that's the realm of the human, is that we can experience all of these, I keep saying the word experience, but it's like human moments that include emotions, not just emotions, but emotions are a big part of it. that include all that. And you can only experience that in the human form with the five senses and the infinite subtle senses. You can't have that experience if you're an angel, or if you're a demon, or if you're a disembodied spirit. You don't get to have those very rich, tasty, juicy, drama-filled lives. However, in the Dark Age, giving our power away, we felt that we didn't have any control over it, and it was just happening to us and hitting on us, and people were suffering and in so much pain because they didn't realize that they were co-creating unconsciously all their horrible experiences. And that's the dark meaning you didn't have access to your consciousness. You didn't see the light. All the programs were not available to you. You didn't have the codes.
Right. It's
like
kind of like the density.
Yeah, the density of consciousness. You can just say that people were dull, or they were stupid, or they were not awake. These different words to describe it. Now that we're starting to see why we behave the way we do, we have psychology, we have different human therapy understandings, and now that we're understanding trauma more, trauma meaning the karma, basically, that you're born with, how can you untie those knots? Not just from bowing to a guru or giving your power away to a devi or to some other spiritual authority. How can you yourself untie your own karma? How can you, but first you have to see it, you have to know how it was created, and then you have to have the willingness to pull back all of your power that you gave away and realize, oh, I created the mess in my life. Partially from previous lives, partially from unconsciousness, partially from reactivity. I didn't have the skills, but we're the ones doing it. And just even that thought can be very, very upsetting to somebody that does not realize that they have the power to determine how they face their life, how they react or don't react to their life. That can be very upsetting. That's how big the split is right now. So you can only even have these conversations if somebody's willing to take 100% responsibility for how they're feeling and how their lives are working out.
And that's because they're so fixated on the outside world.
Well, that's just a belief system. They were trained, their parents and their tribe and their families taught them that. So we only know what our families teach us, because when we're born, we don't understand the rules. We're fresh into the planet again. And sometimes we're born in a completely different culture, because depending on your karmas, where you're born again, you have to relearn the culture, and the culture will teach you what works, what doesn't work, according to your mother and father and the elders. They'll teach you about how things work on the planet Earth. And if it doesn't suit you, then you have to figure out something else. That's why nowadays everything's moving so quickly. We have the internet, and you can access another culture by the push of a button. You can figure out, you can learn a new belief system. But as you get older, it's harder to change your belief systems because they get very rigid. So children are the natural ones to discover and reprogram the new systems if they want to.
Right. Well, we're coming, to the, nearing the end of our program for today, but I would like you to go ahead and share your understanding of spiritual bypassing, because I think that it's really, really important to understand, it's happening more and more for the individuals that people are turning to. They think that, okay, I've got this, I understand this, and that they have arrived where they had, seen their life going, I'm going to do this and da 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 da, and all of a sudden, they feel that they're so evolved and so ascended that they don't need to do any work, and so they're constantly relying on years of their study or years of their practice, and yet it's infinite. And so this spiritual bypassing is very, very front and center out there. I've experienced many teachers who are teaching healing therapies. They're teaching they're teaching light work, they're teaching, even yogic philosophies. But what they haven't done is that they have not kept up themselves, because they feel, well, I've been a yoga teacher for 50 years, and I've taught, a million people around the globe. And what they're doing is they're doing this spiritual bypass, because they're relying on things that have evolved to a certain way beyond what their limited understanding of, I've made it, I'm here, I know
Right.
it.
Yeah, and that's getting that ties into the dualistic understanding of the world, or giving your power away, that there's something out there.
Yes.
There's a God thing out there that I can hook onto and I can feel better. And that's called spirituality. But in reality, getting back to the model of, there's the infinite self, and then there's the limited specialized self, which is called you. It's your name. And everybody is the same. So the infinite part of ourselves is infinite, which means that it's really, really, really big. And it's most of who we are. It's called our identity.
Right.
We are this infinite self. Everybody is. A little baby, an older person, a 40-year-old, a 50. Everybody has it, and you never lose it, because otherwise you'd just die, because it's what's keeping you alive. Then there's the actual form, including the mind and the emotions and so on, the physical body. That's a specialized part that walks around giving people an experience of a specialized form of God, which is called you. It's the beautiful experience of you, which is so, it's not so unique. It is unique. So how to make that work together is a completely different paradigm than spirituality and human and non-spiritual. That whole languaging is part of a dying world. There is no separate spirituality. There is no separate studies on that you have the option of studying. I will study my spiritual self, or I'll go into religion and spirituality. That concept is the old way. The new way is that I am how to study about unity, who I am as a being, and everybody else is too. How can I become more me, more godlike? How can I increase the unity of my infinite self, my God self, and my personal self? How can I have them working better together?
Right.
So spirituality just means that which we can't see, that is bigger than us, that we bow to, that we give our power away to. Well, we can't use that anymore. We have to create a new language for bringing the heavens to earth, because we're here, and there's a reason we're here, and we're here to do the yoga, but not like yoga postures. Right. The yoga in how can we be more fully ourselves. And that is a lot of work. That includes knowledge. We have to become like the ancients of old. We have to do the PhD of studies of a human, or the psychology and the mind work and the meditation and the physicality and the diets and all the studies. Of course, we can't personally know everything, and that's why the internet is here to support the knowledge part. Because we don't have to learn everything. We don't have to read everything. It just, the internet will tell you. But what the challenge now is not about developing more knowledge and memorizing more stuff. That's the old way. Now we have to entrain and develop the muscles of our sensory self and our yogic, our human self, how to be a human, and that means from the inside out. It's a completely different educational system. It's not like I'm going to receive something that you're going to tell me, and that's education. Education is me knowing more about me, so I can be with you, and we can be
embody it more, and embody it more.
Yeah, but we can't create unity if I can't feel me, because I am the one perceiving whether there's unity or not. And if I don't feel united inside of me, I'll never feel united with you.
Yes,
because unity is an experience.
Yeah.
Unity is an experience. It's not we agree on a topic. That's not unity. That's just agreement on some mental concept.
Right.
But unity in the energetic forms, that I am when I say I'm one with you, I'm completely relaxed with you, I feel heard by you. That's an energetic experience, but I have to have the skills inside of me first,
Right.
before I can do that with you.
Right. Which is, which really, really is important because, the old way, the way which, a lot of, I would say, even 10 years ago, the idea of, okay, what is yoga? And when I'm not feeling so well, I'm going to go and do yoga. No,
Right.
yoga is something which becomes your life.
Yeah.
It's your
Yeah,
lifestyle.
essentially.
Exactly. And so, I think for the listeners out there, if you look at, a modality, for instance, let's take yoga. Yoga, people have this understanding that they're going to go ahead and they're going to become more fluid. They're going to become more flexible, and then they're going to go and wear Lululemon clothes, right? And 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 in actual fact, that's the beginning stages. And
Yeah,
eventually,
physicality is necessary. Yes, absolutely.
exactly. And it depends on where you are. But what will happen is that at some point, your diet's going to change, because you're going to want to change your diet because it makes an impact on your complete whole self, your
Absolutely.
energetic system.
Yeah. How you
And
think,
so
how you feel. Yeah.
how you think and how you feel. So, you may just go ahead and you might start by saying, you know what, I don't want chemotherapy. I've decided to go and use some alternative healing modalities. So you're
Right.
reaching out to someone who's a healer, and
Right.
maybe it could be a Chinese medicine practitioner, or it could be a chiropractor, or it could be a number of things. Right now, we are at a point in time in history that you have available. Let's think about my, I'm thinking about my parents. God was a doctor. God was a doctor. If the doctor said, pop these pills, without thinking, without knowing, I've got a prescription, I'm going to go buy and do exactly what the doctor said. I'm not monitoring what's going on internally.
Right.
You see?
Yep. That's normal. That was
And
normal.
that was normal. And what we've done is we've taken God and the teachers and the preachers, and what we're doing is, with this conversation and with all the conversations of that, Uplifting Humans has, is we're trying to educate you. We're trying to help you understand that at the end of the day, it's not about God, the doctor. It's not about God, your preacher. It's about the God that you are.
That's a really big one. Because
that,
what you just said there formally is called blasphemy. And you could be burnt at the stake for that. You could be killed legally just for saying that. So
and look at where we are.
that's how dangerous it has been.
Exactly. And so if you felt, I mean, yoga, let's face it, has been around forever, depending on what part of the world you're from. But why is it where it is today in the Western world, in the Western societies, right? The reason it is because it's needed, necessary, and it's here because it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
But do not limit yourself by thinking that the power lies outside of you. You have to, whenever it comes for you to seek, what is the false light and what is the true light? What is the false light? What is the true light? You
But
have to.
even just what is false and what is true, what you just said there, is that how do you distinguish between the two? And that has to be felt. That's an internal sensation, an internal knowingness that has to be developed. Right? Because you can't say, oh, that's the false light, and somebody else will say, no, that's the right, that's the false light. Well, what is false and what is true?
Right.
That's a frequency. And the truth has a frequency that can only be felt. It cannot be debated or discussed.
Right.
And that's where the new paradigm is shifting to, is that you have to feel what's true. And everybody feels truth exactly the same way. It's not like we're going to have a discussion about it. Is that once truth starts entering the room, you feel it. And you tend, and the the tendency, or I should say the natural reaction, the natural response to truth is called bowing. We bow to the truth. And bowing means you submit to it. You give up your ego, you give up your thinking mind, and you just know. And in traditional forms, it's called bowing, and we physically bow whenever there's a deity or a sacred area or a sacred space. We physically are trained to physically bow. And it just means that your head goes down, your thinking mind goes down, and the heart center responds. And every human responds exactly the same way to truth. Right. But not everybody recognizes truth when it's in the room, because the ego, that you're calling the false light, is so powerful, it can overpower the God self. It can overpower truth. If there's density and your light is not available much to you, your consciousness is kind of shut down, you will fight to the death.
Yes.
To get truth out of the room, because it's so threatening to your identity.
Yes.
And so it's a completely different language and a different technology and a different way of moving through time and space. And we're seeing it in the outer world these days on the news with all the clashing of people in the street or the arguments. And there's no resolution. We're not going to come to a resolution through argument or meetings. It's a fundamental paradigm shift of knowing what's true and what's not true, what's the way forward and what's going back. And a lot of it won't be resolved.
Yes. Well,
through the mind, through talking, through discussions. It can't be.
Exactly. And you know, one of the key things for the listeners out there to recognize, be it your teacher or your preacher, or your doctor, is really tune into yourself. You need to hone those skills, and you need to see, is this creating some form of a judgment? Is this separating, or is it bringing everything more together? Because your system, which is not just your physical system, the system beyond your physicality, okay, your antenna, will tell you that, yes, this
is when you feel calm, when you feel at peace, when you feel at home with yourself, and only you know that feeling.
Exactly.
Nobody else can tell you.
So that's a beautiful conversation, and I hope our listeners got lots of information through this conversation, and we will definitely have Dharmkaur back again. Thank you so much, and Dharmkaur, if you can just, you've got your contact, if you can share that with the listener, it's a great opportunity. If anyone wants to reach out for an interview, for speaking, for any sort of direction, Dharmkaur does beautiful work. Your contact details, please.
Okay, my email is dharmkaur@gmail.com, DHARMKAUR@gmail.com. That's the best way to contact me.
Perfect. Yeah. And we will definitely put that on the podcast as well as the YouTube. And so do look for that. And on that note, I want to thank all the listeners. Please do share the episodes. Please do put the word out that Uplifting Humans, where we honor, empower, educate, and inspire the listener with real stories and expert advice, is around, and we would love for them to join us. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Thank you,
You too.
Dharmkaur.
Okay, take care. Bye.